Commission meeting. Chair Smith is not here, so I will be leading the meeting tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's after 6 o'clock. Alina, can you please take roll call?
Vice Chair Eberly.
Here.
Commissioner Kraus.
Here.
Commissioner Savage.
Here.
Chair Smith. Chair Navachoke. All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Before we can start, we're going to have to pass the resolution authorizing the use of teleconferencing. We have 2 of our commissioners online today. Thank you. Does anyone want to make a motion to authorize the use of teleconferencing? Go ahead, please.
Kraus moved and seconded by, do I have a second?
I second.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Kraus, can you go ahead and state what the resolution is?
It is a resolution to adopt a resolution for the use of teleconferencing under Government Code Section 54953E for meetings of the Human Relations Commission and its committees due to the COVID-19 declared state of emergency.
I second.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and vote.
We have public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, public comment on the resolution.
So we have one person for public comment. Mr. James, just give me a second while I get you set up to speak. Oh, Elena, I think you're going to need to make me, because it's not giving me permission. So just a minute, Mr. James.
And Minka, let me know if you need me to give them like a 5-second warning or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can just.
Yeah, we can let them know. Let's see. I think I need to be, oh, okay, sorry. It's not showing up on my screen.
Is Mr. James available online?
He is, so just give us a moment. Oh, here we go. Perfect. Go ahead. Aram, you have 3 minutes. I will say that our timer's not working. So,
okay.
I know you know the drill. So Elena, my colleague, will come on camera when your time has about 10 more seconds. So I know you're very good at respecting the clock. So just know that that's what we're doing tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mika. Happy New Year to you. It's great to see you over all these years, and we're still doing our part for democracy. So yeah, this really is, in my estimation, having the ability. I used to come in person all the time, and it's a little harder now. And so I really appreciate it, not only for COVID, but I think that post-COVID, for encouraging democracy, it would be good to build this in long term. So I'm not going to take up any more time on this issue, but I do intend to talk during oral communication and also when we get to the agenda item on outreach for the Asian American community and other Pacific Islanders in terms of that issue that's on the agenda, and we'll see if there's anything else, but I'll be here.
Thank you, Aaron. Just to let you know that item number, I think it's number 4.
Five, Minka.
It's been rescheduled to the next meeting.
And could you tell me what 5 is?
The 5 is the Asian American project. So that has been rescheduled to the next meeting. So if you want to share your ideas just during regular oral communication for items not on the agenda, you're free to do so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
public comment starts now.
Oh.
Right, so.
It is.
Go ahead if you want to share your thoughts. I'm sorry, my microphone wasn't on. It's public comment.
Okay.
So go
Hi.
ahead, Mr. James.
So, first of all, I wanted to say that I was extraordinarily disappointed in the way that the new city council, other than Julia Lithcott-Hames was a hero. She nominated Greg Tanaka to be our next vice mayor. Lydia Koo, of course, was selected as the mayor unanimously. But I thought that it was just appalling to see that Greg wasn't given the opportunity to be our next vice mayor, then mayor, and that somebody that I respect highly, Greer Stone, just leapfrogged over. It looked like it was a setup deal. It was a Semidian kind of a deal where they, they're all big, Joe thinks highly of them. And so Greer Stone got to leapfrog over. And I was really disappointed in Greer because he speaks, Greg Tanaka's family was in the concentration camps. He suffered tremendously, hard scrabble youth growing up. And he's done wonderfully. He has 16 years of public services versus, he was the chair of the Planning and Transportation Commission. While he's been on the city council for 6 years, chair of the finance committee. He was the liaison at one time for this committee, the HRC. So I thought it was unconscious racism that carried the day to let Greer Stone jump over. I know he teaches on these subjects, but when it came down to his own personal interests, he chose his own interests over doing the right thing. I just wanted to let you also know that at the county level, we're going to be meeting with all the Coalition for Justice and Accountability, with all the members of the Board of Supervisors, newly aligned, and Robert Johnson, our new sheriff, in hope of discouraging the sheriff's department, which is the only agency in the county that doesn't have tasers, from purchasing the tasers. I hope you've had an opportunity to see the great work that Sergeant John Allen, who's employed by the Sheriff's Department, did on the canine 17-minute video that I've sent your way on several occasions. And he's going to be working with us on trying to prevent tasers coming into the Sheriff's Department. I'm also very concerned the selection of the new police chief, Andrew Binder, doesn't want to pay attention to the RIPA data that shows that the Palo Alto Police Department is up to its own continued systemic racism in the way they do traffic stops, where they prolong detentions for African Americans, searches. I mean, it's just, it's the regular stuff. We're just continuing down the road. So I'm going to be scrutinizing in this new year, speaking out on our police department. I'm going to be a best police practices advocate, as I've been doing for many years. And I hope that you all will pay attention to that. I know that some of you love the police department and think that, their stuff doesn't stink, but I disagree on that. I hope that you will do your job as commissioners to just vet and scrutinize and do the great job that you can to make sure that Andrew Binder and our city manager, Ed Chicato, that's supposed to be the police department's boss, reins in the racism that continues to exist in that department. Zach Perone.
Mr. James, I'm sorry, your time is up. It's beyond up.
Okay, thank you very much for the time.
Sorry. Thank you.
Chair, just to let you know, we do need to go back to the resolution and pass that.
Oh, okay. I'm
So
sorry.
if Elena can get that back up on the screen.
Yeah, we never voted. All right, we're back to the resolution allowing for teleconferencing. We're going to go ahead and vote. We're going to start.
Do
from the
we have
top.
a first and a second?
Yes,
you.
Commissioner Krause moved and seconded by Commissioner Savage.
Thank you, Chair.
We're going to go ahead and vote. Commissioner Krause,
Aye.
Commissioner Savage,
Aye.
Vice Chair, aye. It's passed. Thank you. Sorry about that. I jumped the gun. All right, Minka, do we need to vote on moving number 5? Or was it already deleted?
It was already taken off before
Okay.
the meeting, so we're fine.
Thank you. All right. So I guess we can go ahead to the approval of the minutes from the last meeting from November 10th of last year.
I vote to approve meeting minutes.
I second.
We're going to go ahead and vote. Commissioner Krause,
I,
Commissioner Savage,
Aye.
and Vice Chair, aye. Thank you. It's passed. The minutes have been approved. All right. Do we have our presenters for number 3?
Yes, I am very pleased to have my colleague, Tim Shimizu from the Attorney's Office. He is attending this evening, and he will be going over the next agenda item. So Tim, thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. Good evening and Happy New Year to all of the honorable commissioners of the HRC. My name is Tim Shimizu. I'm an assistant city attorney here for Palo Alto. I work with Mika to help her help you on the HRC. And so today I've been asked to come here and give you a short update on the Brown Act and how it's changing with the end of the COVID state of emergency, which will end at the end of February, and which has implications for meeting remotely starting March 1st. So if we can go to the next slide. And the next slide. Okay, so just in general, this California state of emergency is scheduled to end on February 28th of this year. And under the COVID state of emergency, the Brown Act allowed remote attendance, virtual attendance with fewer requirements than pre-COVID. And going forward though, starting March 1st, the default will revert back to in-person attendance for commissioners. And this is for all Brown Act bodies. So in terms of the council, other commissions, committees, statewide, the default will be back to in-person attendance. However, remote attendance will be allowed under certain circumstances, but it's going to be more limited compared to what was allowed during the state of emergency. So next slide. So here's an overview of what was allowed pre-COVID in terms of remote attendance, which will still be allowed post state of emergency. This is what you're familiar with is as what we're going to call standard remote attendance. And this is when your participation location turns into a satellite public participation place. You have to post an agenda on your door. You have to let anyone from the public participate wherever you are. They have to be able to basically sit with you and participate as if you are, wherever you are is the council chambers, a satellite council chambers. So obviously that's not always feasible or desired. So that's one way. The second way is what is called AB 2449, which was just adopted last year and is now in place to take effect this year with the end of the state of emergency. So I will go over both of those a little bit more in detail. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so standard remote attendance, and all of this is review if you went to the training earlier this year for boards and commissions, but if you weren't there, I'll go over it right now. And so standard remote attendance, so this is the rule that existed before COVID. And this is when, if you want to appear remotely at a Brown Act meeting, you have to know well in advance to the point of it has to be on the agenda that you're going to appear remotely. And also the agenda has to have the location, the address, physical address of where you're going to be. You then have to post that agenda on the door of wherever you are. And you have to allow the public to come in and participate wherever you are, those physically located. And that could be at your house, it could be in a foreign country, wherever you may be, you have to follow these rules. So this is really not practical in certain circumstances, like if you get sick or something, you just might not know this in advance, and it's not practical if you're moving while you're participating, say for example, you're in a car, or you're just not in a fixed location, or you're in a location that is just not conducive to the public coming there, this is not the option for you. But at least this is at least one option that existed before COVID, and that still remains today. So next slide. So as an example of how this has been used before, here's the city council agenda from March 2nd, 2020, right before COVID started. And you can see where the arrow is. It says Vice Mayor DuBois will participate from the business office of the Courtyard Seacus Marriott in New Jersey. So there you go. So according to the rules, he had to post the full agenda on the door of the business office and let anyone who wanted to come into that business office and participate in the city council office with him. So just an example of how it's done. Okay, next slide. So AB 2449 is new. So these are new rules enacted during the pandemic for after the state of emergency ends. And so again, which is March 1st of this year, or it ends February 28th. So starting March 1st. So basically, this is a I'm sick. I'm sick and need to participate virtually rule. And so in order to avail yourself of this rule, you have to have what's called either just cause or emergency circumstances. And most of them have to do with being ill, taking care of someone in your family who's ill, whether that's a child or a parent. You yourself have a contagious illness. Or the other category is that you're traveling on official business for a state or local agency. So this is important because if you are using AB 2449, so your sick remote attendance category, you do not have to post any of the agenda on your door. You don't have to let the public into your dwelling wherever you happen to be. It's as if you just are appearing remotely, probably like you're used to today. So the key takeaways are you have to have a certain reason. So basically you have to be sick, be taking care of someone who's sick, or you're on official business. And if you qualify, you don't have to open up your house or wherever you are to everyone coming in. And you don't have to publish your address on the agenda. Okay, so next slide. So in order to do this, there's a process for how you avail yourself of AB 2449, that basically your sick remote access attendance. So if you are, there's two categories. One is called just cause, and that's when you're sick, taking care of someone who's sick, or are on official business. And if you qualify for this category, all you have to do is notify the commission. So basically through Minka, if it's before the meeting or right at the meeting, at the very beginning of the meeting, you can come on virtually and just say, give a very brief explanation, like one sentence saying, I qualify under this AB 2449 for just cause, and today I will participate remotely. And the commission doesn't have to even approve that. You just tell them that's what you're going to do. And as long as you're otherwise qualified, business as normal. Just like today, basically. Yeah. Okay, so the next slide is AB 2449 has a separate category called emergency circumstances. And this is basically for a catch-all for every other circumstance when because of an emergency and you're, especially if you're sick or you're physically incapacitated for some reason, but you're somehow still well enough to participate, because I know everyone wants to participate as much as they can. You can come virtually to the meeting and request that due to emergency circumstances, I need to participate virtually today. And the rest of the commission has to then vote and approve that. And so if you know that this is happening in advance, you can always let Minka know. But obviously, if it's a true emergency, you may not know in advance. Show up virtually at the very beginning of the meeting. Tell Minka you need to go through this process, and we'll just do it. And if the commission approves, then you will be able to participate remotely again. As you do now, you don't have to put no notice on the door, no letting people in your house kind of thing. Okay, next slide. So just to emphasize that there are these two differences under AB 2040-49. There's the just cause, and this is again for if you're sick or you're taking care of someone who's sick or you're on official business, that's when you use just cause. And that's, you just have to give notice. You don't have to ask the commission for permission. You just do it. You just tell them. Emergency circumstances is a physical or family medical emergency. So again, it doesn't have to be you personally who is having an emergency. You do have to make the request in the meeting, and the commission votes on it right up front at the beginning of the meeting. Assuming they say yes, you can carry on virtually. And so again, your rationales don't have to be very long at all. They can be very short. The law even says no more than 20 words should be sufficient. And you do not have to give your exact diagnosis, just a general description of what's going on, and that is enough under the law. Okay, next slide. So under AB 2449, if one member is availing themselves of this regime to appear remotely, there are some other requirements for the rest of the group. So one of the most important ones is that at least a quorum of the members of your commission must attend from a singular in-person location. So a quorum has to be basically at City Hall or wherever the rest of usually meet. So that's important. And that's why it is important, if you know in advance, to tell Minka in advance to make sure that this can happen. Another thing is a disclosure. You have to disclose if anyone where you are is over 18, and who they are generally, and how they're related to you. My guess is that that's just for transparency, to make sure that there's not a secret phantom person behind you telling you what to do, or at least if there is, everyone knows about it. And you generally have to participate with both audio and video. So usually just one or the other. Say only the audio is generally not sufficient. Next slide. So some additional requirements are the agenda, of course, must tell the public how they can access the meeting and offer public comment. It has to identify how they're supposed to do that, whether it's over the phone, internet, etc., or in person. And the meeting can't require the public to only submit comments in advance. We still have to be able to take in live comment during the meeting, whether that's through in-person, phone, or the internet. And lastly, if broadcasting is disrupted to the public, the meeting has to be paused until that's fixed. So no votes can be taken until, say, the feed is back up. So we may not always know that right away, but if we start getting comments from people on Zoom or on YouTube or something, or people start chatting people and say, hey, I don't see it, what's going on? Need to figure out what's going on. Okay, next slide. AB 2449 also imposes limits to how many times you can appear virtually under the rules of AB 2449, and which is generally 2 if your body only meets once a month. So in a body like HRC, which meets once a month, right, or is scheduled to meet once a month, you can only use AB 2449 twice. That means you can only appear virtually twice in a year, even if you happen to be sick or otherwise qualify any other time. So use it, but be wise about it. Okay, next slide. So here's an example script of what would happen if you came under AB 2449, had an emergency circumstance, and you would come to the meeting again and say a script like this. We'll have this for you. We'll leave this with Minka just so in case it ever happens, you know what to say. Again, you're just highlighting that you're availing yourself of this law, a very brief description of what's going on, who's in the room with you if they're over 18, and then the commission will vote. Okay, next slide. So just some pointers. So if you are going to need to appear virtually for any reason, it's best to tell Minka as soon as you know. Obviously, that's easier to do sometimes than others, but even if it's 10 minutes before the meeting, it's better than right at the beginning of the meeting. You will need to, if your commission imposes an additional like remote attendance policy, which council has done, but I don't think any other commission has done, just need to make sure you're compliant with that. And the commission will have to keep track of your remote attendance under AB 2449 because again, you're only allowed 2 times in 1 calendar year. So something to remember. Okay, and then just something that's not in the deck, but that is there also is that the Brown Act acknowledges that people might have other issues that come under the ADA for participating in meetings. So that's always there as an option if the public or commissioners need to avail themselves of that. But obviously, if you do, that's a discussion we can have offline with Minka. Okay, so very quick go over of what's new. But things are changing starting March 1st. Boards and commissions will have to mainly be back in public, but I anticipate that our virtual presence will still be strong in case of the need for virtual appearances and also for the public to be engaged in person and virtually.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I did attend the training, but it was great to have a refresher and see the slides. And I think since the training, it's gone even a little bit more detailed. And it answered a lot of the questions that people had at the training. So I appreciate you coming and going over it with us. Minka, do we go to public comment or questions first?
You can go to questions first,
Okay.
and then to public comment, and then you can come back and see if there's any further discussion or motions the HRC would like to make. My understanding is, and Tim can confirm that there is no action required if the HRC does not desire to make anything different or more restrictive than what California state law indicates. Is that correct, Tim?
That's correct.
Okay, and Tim, while I have the floor, can you also confirm that these are just for commissioners, that the city will continue to allow members of the public to join via the remote access points of Zoom that we will continue to use for our public meetings?
Yeah, that's what I understand. So I would expect that that's going to continue. Yeah.
Great. And for those that did not hear me, because I've been told I didn't have my microphone on, that is just letting folks know that these new rules are for commissioners. And to the best of our knowledge, at this point, the plan is to continue having meetings remotely on Zoom, YouTube, and the Media Center, and that there will be access points for the public to listen and make comment through one of those remote options. So Chair, I give the floor back to you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Yes, Commissioner Savage?
Well, no, just a comment. Thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough, very specific. And I only hope that none of us ever have to use what you've talked about.
Oh, you're welcome, and likewise. Yes, it's very hard. Who knows what's going to happen to any of us, I guess. But you should always remember that it's there and to let Minka know as soon as you can, if you think, or even just thinking about whether this applies.
Commissioner Krause?
Thank you for the presentation. I pray that we don't have a surge and have to revisit this once more. I worry this is the new reality. And as much as we'd like to have it go away, I don't think this is going away. And I wonder, Tim, going forward, how is that analyzed? How is that put into action? What's necessary for us to have the safeguards that may become necessary one more time?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So COVID levels have gone up and down, as we know, over the past since the pandemic started. And with different variants, there's different levels of severity that, average more or less people get. So the way that state law is structured is that, if a state of emergency were to be extended, say, and it wasn't going to end, say, on February 28th, we would go back to what you can do now.
Okay,
And so it would be up to city to decide if ultimately if it wanted to change any of that, but legally under state law would be allowed to. On the other hand, the state legislature has signaled that the legislature thinks that things are getting better, at least because they've phased out certain levels of remote participation starting in 2024 and starting again more in 2026. So when you look at the Brown Act, there's certain phase outs that happen next year and then 2 years from now. And so you can see that they're interested in getting back to in-person meetings. But again, if, as we all know now, no one knows the future. So should anything change, the legislature may have to go back and re-examine those laws that are in place right now.
thank you.
Thank you. We can go ahead and open for public comment. Do we have anybody, Minka?
Let me check. We have one public comment. I'll wait for the clock to come up on the screen.
Okay, great.
And Mr. James, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I didn't see this on the agenda, but it was very, very interesting. And Minka, thank you, because I think there was only like one line in the presentation, and it was a great presentation, but about the fact that if I'm understanding what you said correctly, I don't need to show up physically at the meetings. I can still do it remotely. So that I think that I got that correctly. And secondly, I'm not sure that the conversations about Americans with Disability, the Americans with Disability Act, should be offline. I would think that that would be something of public interest, because certainly people that have disabilities are entitled to run for office. And if they have to appear remotely and they got the brains and the ability to take care of critical public issues as well as anybody that's more able-bodied, then that's a discussion I would like to hear. And then secondly, Commissioner Kraus raised some important issues. I mean, listen, if you listen to certain media outlets, we are in a surge as we speak. And so I'm not sure that, does the legislature get to make decisions that are better made by our health officials? I don't, it's a bit of a controversial conversation. And I know that in some communities, somebody's given me the Robert Kennedy Jr. book. He's a great writer. He doesn't believe that there's, that this is a, sort of a conspiracy. The whole thing about COVID is a conspiracy. I don't happen to, subscribe to that, but certainly he's a great writer and he's got a big following. So, you've got a lot of issues out there that that I don't believe that are necessarily resolved by the legislature saying, hey, COVID's gone. We're not in the middle of a surge. I don't think that's where their expertise lie. So I think that needs to be a broader community conversation. I know our own, and I'm forgetting her name. She's a great person, lives here in Palo Alto, went to Palo Alto. That was the head of, is very controversial in terms of her pronouncements on COVID. But, I think we had a lot of lives that were saved. I'm not a scientist, so I can't say that with 100% certainty, but I think this conversation, one, wasn't clear enough, except for Minka making it clear that it doesn't apply to the public. And secondly, I think we need to give more attention to people who have substantial disabilities who can do the job, but might not necessarily be able to get down to City Hall to sit there and through the city council meetings where they can easily do that remotely. Okay, thank you for considering my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. James.
Thank you.
Chair, there are no more speakers.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion on this topic? Okay, thank you so much for joining us and for the presentation. I think you're free to go or stay and watch. Thank you. All right. Next item, we're going to have a presentation by the Palo Alto Student Climate Coalition on a draft framework on climate impact on vulnerable communities here in Palo Alto. Excited to hear from them, and they're actually present in person, and they're going to join us now. And we're going to turn it over to them.
Come up on here.
And
maybe.
please introduce yourselves and maybe what school you guys go to.
When you
what
speak,
grade?
you need to hit the
Thank you.
red button, so maybe each one of you could be. Why don't we do 1, 2, 3, so there's a space. Great, so just hit the red button when you want to talk. So just Smith and I, because she had seen on the HRC work plan the issue of working on climate change, and she had some ideas after working with the students that she presented to us. So the chair, I met with them once, and the chair met with the group twice, and they have some ideas that they'd like to share with the HRC to get your input.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Angelina Roche, and I go to Gunn High School. I'm a junior. And this is Via Rajan. She also goes to Gunn High School. We're part of the Palo Alto Student Climate Coalition, which is a student-led organization composed of environmental activists. Kat is also here. She is here tonight as part of the 350 Palo Alto organization, which is partnered with ours. We're here to present our project on climate change stories from Palo Alto's frontline communities. Next slide. So as we all know, climate change is a critical global issue and that is already affecting millions around the world. From the floods in Pakistan, widespread droughts, and record-breaking heat domes in the US, climate change is now, and it has led to disastrous ramifications. Next slide. And although we would like to view these extreme effects of climate change as far off and removed from us, we must recognize that events such as heat waves, fires, and flooding are direct byproducts of climate change, and they're affecting us right here, right now in Palo Alto. Next slide. The communities that face the effects of climate change at a higher and more dramatic rates are called frontline communities. They're determined by two factors. One, being on the front line of climate change impacts, and two, having vulnerabilities that make it hard to mitigate these impacts. Some examples of impacts on these communities are heart-related illnesses, respiratory and cardiovascular diseases, injuries, and fatalities from severe weather events. Next slide.
So I'm going to go in a little bit more detail about these two factors, just so we're all on the same page of what frontline communities are. And this is all courtesy of Georgetown Law Climate Center. So the first factor, being on the front lines of climate impacts, that oftentimes looks like being around rising temperatures, so experiencing heat waves in our community, more polluted air, which means different things in different communities, but for us specifically, wildfire smoke. And then a third thing, increasing frequency and intensity of extreme storms, which we've seen just recently because of all the flooding. So you can see on the bottom of the slide, wildfire smoke, heat waves, and flooding are some of the main impacts in our community. Next slide, please. But what makes a frontline community different from anybody who may be impacted by wildfire smoke, such as myself, I wouldn't be considered a frontline community because a frontline community has vulnerabilities that makes it hard to mitigate these impacts. Whereas for myself, I have easy access to clean air because I have an air filter at home. I'm not a renter. I don't have a leaky house, so I have the ability to seal my house, keep the air nice. There are a number of different demographics that you might see in frontline communities. Again, this table is from Georgetown Law's Climate Center. Things like being a senior citizen or being homeless, low income, a renter, an outdoor worker. Most of these have something in common, which is that these are historically marginalized groups. And so by definition of being marginalized, that means that you are not central to access to resources. And so they have already existing vulnerabilities that makes them, again, experience the first and worst impacts of climate change. Next slide, please. So what we're going to do now, and we're hoping to get a little bit of input from the HRC after the end of this presentation, is we're going to go over our proposal for the framework and what the project is going to look like. Oh. Would you mind going back one slide? Thank you. So out of all the demographics that we showed on the first slide, we have selected a few that we particularly want to focus on for a number of different reasons, mostly, relevancy to Palo Alto. So I'm going to go over a few of them. We'll all each take a few of these and explain why we are hoping to focus on these particular demographics in this project. So for example, I chose senior citizens because they are much more vulnerable to high heat generally, heat-related illnesses. I also picked out outdoor workers because they are going to be working in the elements, and so they're going to have a lot of impact from wildfire smoke and from heat waves, and we'd like to see to what extent they're able to mitigate those impacts. And I also chose people with disability, which for a couple of reasons. One is that every community has people with disability, but they're very invisible to the community at large. So actually going out and visiting people and talking to them about their experiences will be valuable. And also because very little research has been done about the impacts on people with disability at a national level. There just isn't a lot out there. And yet, if you look at the newspapers, you find that they are disproportionately affected in certain tragedies around, say, like floods and wildfires. They are disproportionately killed in these types of incidents. So I thought it was important to start looking at them.
And I've chosen renters and homeless as two groups. Renters, as Kat mentioned before, have significantly little control over their means of protecting themselves against the effects of climate change. And secondly, the unhoused are experiencing these effects first and foremost, and they have little to no resources to protect and mitigate the effects of climate change.
I chose low-income households because low-income residents are more likely to live in older homes that don't offer much protection from extreme weather. Next slide, please. So why are we telling stories? Stories provide more emotion and vivid detail and are remembered for longer periods of time. Listening to their stories motivates more action to be made and shifts the audience's beliefs and attitudes to understand the perspective of the minority. Stories allow us to take note of feelings, thoughts, and opinions instead of just written statistics. Next slide, please. So why local? Going local prioritizes local concerns so that our community can be involved in creating solutions using local resources and support networks. Through HRC connections with multiple local connections, as well as with the number of local community-based organizations and expertise on local community initiatives, we plan to interview frontline communities and build solutions based on their experiences. Next slide, please. Questions? Yeah.
I'm sorry, could we go back to the
Yeah,
last slide
sorry.
just for a second? I just wanted to see the HRC participation that you wanted. Thank you so much. That was super informative. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to the commissioners, see if any comments or questions. Commissioner Krause? You're muted.
Yeah, I just had never mind, I had a tough time finding my mouse. On a Monday evening, city council session, there was a very impressive presentation about tactics that are being utilized right now during, shall we say, the time of Noah's Ark in the city of Palo Alto. And perhaps access to that deck, Minka, might be really useful for the students to have a chance to review.
So that was on Monday night's council agenda?
Yes, it was. It was after the swearings in, the voting, and whatever. There was, I think it was the city manager. I don't, I was listening and not watching as much. But that presentation, I think, for the 3 students that are here will give them a starting point.
Okay, I'll see if I can get that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Savage. You're muted.
Here I am. Thrilled that we could listen to this. It's very important, obviously. And I just want to throw this out. What about, these climate change people partnering with the HRC, and discussing the importance of it, telling personal stories, just what you've done here. But this could all be enveloped into kind of a seminar or, just a public meeting to be held somewhere. That's the first thing that came to my mind after listening to this.
Thank you. So thank you so much again for the presentation. I want to hear from you on, I see that you are looking at partnering with the HRC, and I'll let you respond to all the different comments after I go. So you can be in touch with our expertise as far as what kind of organizations there are in the community. And I'm sure we and Minka can help you with that. And the other thing is to connect to people that you might want to interview, correct? Do you have an idea of how you intend on interviewing these people, or how many you're looking for? And then what do you have in mind as a final product? I have something in mind, but I want to hear from you first about, what does this look like?
Do you want to go to
Go ahead.
there's a couple of appendix slides that might be relevant here. That's the general timeline of the project. And then there's some of the requests of the HRC is the other slide. There's a lot of words on it, but we just wanted to give it to you for reference.
And are we going to be able to get a copy of this slide deck? Okay, great.
Did you guys want to tackle any of the questions? I can give you a sense of what we think it's going to look like. We don't have it fully planned out, how many people and things like that. We're planning to do semi-structured interviews with people, and we're hoping to, through the nonprofits and community-based orgs that the HRC has access to, we're hoping to talk to them first and explain what we're looking for and see if they can find us people to interview. I suspect each interview lasts between 20 and 30 minutes, but I don't know for sure because we haven't written the questions out yet. It would start out asking a bit about themselves, like, who are you? What do you like about Palo Alto? What kinds of things do you do here? Get a sense of their day-to-day life, until we started asking a little bit about any kind of weather impacts. That would come a little bit later because we want to have, for example, support networks, and that comes out when you talk to them more about like their day-to-day life. So I think that it's going to depend a lot on who we can get access to and which nonprofits and community-based orgs are interested in working with us. As for the number of people, I would be impressed if we had more people than we could interview. So I'm just going to throw that out there, but I don't have a specific number of people.
Yeah, and in terms of end goals and the product, we would like to base that off of the interviews. We wouldn't want to go in with preconceived notions of what is needed. We are wanting to highlight local resources and what we're already doing. For example, providing sandbags at Mitchell Park Library and things like that. So how are we highlighting what we already have and how do we increase its reach? And also perhaps providing a report of the results of our interviews and our research.
Commissioner Krause?
I'd love to know your thoughts on the interview format. I know that I'd find it very valuable to see them. So for you to be able to do a small video and we can literally hear the words of the person, and that may prove valuable. But what are your thoughts? Do you want to do videos? Do you want to have written formats? What do you want to do going forward?
Oh, we were definitely planning to talk to them one-on-one, face-to-face. Whether we were going to record it or just take notes at the time, that's not completely determined yet. But it was going to be a conversation.
Okay. Can I suggest that you think about what what the end product will look like, and then help us understand that decision? You might have something that might be valuable that could be used online and distributed to other colleagues of yours in the same age group, as well as us sort of older folks that are involved in climate change. Fair enough?
Yeah, if you had any examples of what you're thinking about, we'd love to hear them now, actually.
I'm thinking about having a short vignette of the people that you're targeting, because the words and the appearance of the person, whoever they might be, is very powerful. And it could become a bit of a end product that goes on after this, of adding interviews. For example, the nonprofit Witness, over a decade ago, was doing photographs and distributing disposable cameras. It was 10 years ago, or maybe 20. But they wanted to document, they wanted to witness areas of atrocities or crisis. And that picture showed so many more words than would be possible in a written document.
Thank you, Commissioner Krause. Actually, you've reminded me of something we were supposed to talk about and forgot to.
Okay.
Since it was a story-based format, we were considering possibly seeing if there was a way to work with the Art Commission, for example, because I know that they've done a lot of climate change related art pieces. And so down the line, when we're deciding how exactly we're going to present it, we were hoping to perhaps be connected with them and see if they had any interest.
And if you want to look further on social imagery and how it's being used over the different NGOs I've been involved with, I'm happy to share information.
Yes, we would love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Krause. I think that the presentation to the HRC is perfectly timed, considering the flooding that we've been dealing with. So it's a great reminder. I'm also excited about the possibility of partnering up. It's something that we wanted to address, and we are so happy and lucky to have you here with a way for us to address this and be partners on this. I would say that I think that we need to then have an ad hoc committee if we're going to partner up with them. Correct, Minka?
Yeah, so the chair is already
Okay.
a part of this, so that if one other person was interested in working with the chair and the students, other than, Elaine and I will continue to resource them, with contacts and so forth.
Okay. And is there a way to contact the Art Commission and see if they would like to join the ad hoc committee as well?
I would say that I'd have to look how that works. Just if Tim was still on the call, I could ask Tim that. But
Mhm.
so I just have to see how that would work. But I can be in touch with Elise DeMarzo, the staff to the Art Commission, and see if there's interest and bandwidth on the behalf of the Art Commission.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. Should we go ahead and pick the other person today? We're missing a couple of people, but Chair Smith is already on it. We can
Right.
pick one more person. If I am happy to join, Commissioner Kraut, but I'm happy to cede as well. Commissioner Kraus, go ahead and speak. So. You're muted.
I know, mysteriously. Thanks, Minka. I didn't get to cough at anybody. I'd be delighted to help and go forward with the students if that would be appropriate. I work with many of the climate oriented NGOs at the national level, having just completed a project for the Sierra Club. I also have been the CEO of one of the early climate companies called Carbon Tracing. So it's terrain which I'm very familiar with. But chair, vice chair, let's decide among ourselves what's the workload and what's most appropriate, but I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, but I don't think we can do it offline, all of us together talk about it. So we need to decide during one of our meetings. So,
Whatever you want, I'm here.
if you have the bandwidth for it and you're excited for it, I'm happy to have you join Chair Smith.
And for our staff, I'm happy to work with everyone. Just a reminder, Commissioner Kraus, that his rep is coming up. So this would be in addition to reviewing the his rep applications. If you can do it, like I said, I'm happy to work with anyone, but I just wanted to remind you of that if because that will take up much of February. But if you can do both, that's good.
Why not? Why not? Or if I get overloaded, which I did when I fractured my patella and could no longer go do site visits. Fair enough?
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. So sounds like you have two HRC partners now.
Yeah, thank you. We look forward to working with them.
Great. And then the way that I'm envisioning this, you'll meet with which would be an HRC ad hoc committee. That's how it has to work. Okay. We can only have two people working on something offline. And maybe you can come back in a couple of months with an update. And I would love, and I think everybody's on the same page, that the culmination of these efforts would be, the product, the storytelling product, the inventory of the current services and maybe some ideas of what we can do to better prepare to protect these vulnerable communities the next time, which might be, the following week, because it seems like it's a nonstop, climate assault basically in the city. So I think it's timely. I think it's necessary. And I'm very happy that you guys reached out to us. And I think it's going to be a bigger item, a bigger focus for us. We have our priority meeting coming up in the next couple of months. We're going to set our priorities for the next year. And I feel like climate change is going to climb that priority list. So we're very excited to work on it and have you guys here. Thank you so much. And now we need to open for public comment. Correct, Minka?
That is correct. And we have 2 comments because I will be reading the comment of someone who called me and is not able to join. So we will go first to Mr. James, but we will wait for my colleague to get the clock up. Thank you, Elena. Okay, Mr. James, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So thank you to the speakers tremendously. I live in an Eichler home that my mom left me a few years ago, and it's a quarter of a mile away from the San Francisco Creek. And every year she was very worried about sandbags, and I was always able to do that for her. Now I was limited in it, and I managed to get them up here at the house. But with some of my physical limitations, it was quite a chore. So I would love to see a youth corps permanently installed to help around that kind of issue. And, if I could support them in any way, I would. Also, I think, environmental racism is another way of phrasing this. And for many, many years, we failed to collaborate as much as we should with East Palo Alto. They've had all kinds of indignities caused by, in part, the lack of our interest in serving our neighbors, East Palo Alto. So we need to reach out and get the stories from our neighbors as well. I've pushed the town of Palo Alto. We have California had the first reparations commission in the country, spearheaded originally by our present Secretary of State, the first African-American Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, who, when she was in the state assembly, pushed that, got it through. I want to do some reparations so that we can have a distribution of resources, a redistribution to the people that should still be in Palo Alto and are not. Black people have been pushed out of this community for a very long time. You wonder why a white guy's talking about it. Well, I think I'm the last white person left in my very large family. So I better take an interest in that. And I see it and I think about it every day. And our police are an environmental hazard as far as I'm concerned. When they release canines and on people of color, when they release tasers on people of color, when they engage in prolonged detentions of people of color, they make black people, when they stop them, frequently sit on the curb. But I'm a white guy. I've never been asked to do that. So, it's a big, broad issue that we've got to approach from a lot of retired public defender, but I'm the self-appointed public defender of the city of Palo Alto since I retired in 2004. And there's a lot of injustice that goes on here that we don't want to talk about. So yeah, reparations is something that we could do to redistribute stuff. So marginalized people are no longer living in marginalized communities because they have the money that's been ripped off from them by systemic racism, by white folks and others. So there's a lot of very powerful things that you youth can do. And I'm just really proud to see you all starting this conversation. So thank you very, very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. James. So let me just read the comment of a member of the public that called me. Just get it on my notes. And I will watch that I'm on the timer as well. Thank you. So this is a longtime resident who is a senior and disabled. She is not able to join online, feels too physically ill to join in person, And so she asked me to convey her public comments. She says she is a member of a small amount of Palo Alto residents that either own or rent homes that are seniors, disabled, and extremely low income. And she uses the kind of the HUD definition of extremely low income. She says that they have to pay all of their utilities, water, sewage, garbage, and storm drain. And that is different than renters in apartments who are usually just responsible for electric and gas. In her opinion, the city's rate assistance program, that's the Utilities Department rate assistance program, does not provide enough assistance and only does so for gas and electricity at a 25% reduction and storm drain at about a 20% reduction. She's read about the recent Measure L that passed in the city and would like the city to use some of the funding from the transferring of profits from the city-owned gas utility to the general fund to be set aside as a fee reduction program for extremely low-income seniors and disabled folks who are like in her position. She mentioned, and I did not do any research on any of her comments, but that the state of Alaska has something called the Permanent Dividend Fund from 1979, which takes the profits from the mineral resources of the state and gives a portion to each resident in the state. And she asked that that be looked at as an example. So those are her comments, which she shared with me.
Thank you so much, Minka. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. Any last comments?
Can we interview that lady?
I can ask her if she's willing to be interviewed.
Thank you.
We were also wondering about the details of the ad hoc committee. Specifically, would we need to meet with each of the ad hoc members before then, before the meeting in a couple months? And if so, what are the rules to those meetings, or is it informal?
So you can meet with them whenever you want.
Sure.
You can just go through Minka and she can set it up. And there are no rules. You can meet with, because it's just the two of them, you can meet anytime. And I just recommended the ad hoc committee so that you have somebody that you can work with and partner up. So if you have questions, you can go through Minka, and I'm assuming that at some points it would be appropriate or helpful to you to meet with them.
Okay,
I
great.
think it would not feel much different than when we met those couple times by Zoom. There would just be one more person. So it doesn't add a layer of the formality in which you've seen in this meeting.
All right, thank you so much. We were also wondering if we could get the contact information for the members that we would be working with, so we can restart.
Yeah, Minka, could you provide that? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Got deleted, so we are going to move on now to commissioner reports. Do either Commissioner Krause or Commissioner Savage have anything to report on? Okay, Commissioner Krause, go ahead.
As you know, Vice Chair, you and I and Minka have had further discussions on the renters' proposal work we're engaged in. And I can report that the information that you gathered for us, Minka, thank you very much. That was very useful. And hopefully we'll have time to collaborate again, Vice Chair, as we go forward, hopefully, to a presentation in February.
Correct. Thank you so much for that update. Commissioner Savage, anything?
Nothing for me.
Okay, thank you. For me, Commissioner Krause already gave part of my update. The other update is that I did participate in the CDBG application review. And Minka, do you know when they're going to come to the HRC?
Next month.
Next month, February. That's what I thought. I meant to confirm with you, but I didn't. So yeah, we made some recommendations, and we'll report to the HRC next month on that. All right, our council liaison is not present, so we'll move on to staff liaison report. Minka, thank you.
Thank you. So I have three things. One, I believe, or I need to forward the email, is that it's recruitment time for board and commissioners. So we have 2 positions that are ending. And those commissioners can reapply if that's something that they want to do, because I know that's always a question that I get. So I can send you those flyers on, and so that is coming up. So the AAPI report that came off, so the chair and I have met with Commissioner Novichoke, who unfortunately could not be here tonight. So what I have from her, and that the HRC will be seeing soon, is she has come up with a questionnaire that could be distributed to folks to fill out. It's a 10-question, really simple questionnaire. And Elena will be coming up with just a simple city website. And so folks can get a copy of the SurveyMonkey, that way. They can sit down with their neighbor and ask them to fill out the survey. So there'll be multiple ways in which we can distribute the survey to have folks fill it out. And then, looking if we need more representation in one area or the other. So what we're looking as far as timeline. So January and February, we're looking at the survey. It looks like the survey will close sometime in March. And then the HRC will, probably the subcommittee first, will look at the results and compile some kind of draft report for the HRC's review, bring it to the HRC's review, get your input and comments. Maybe there's someone else they need to talk to or some aspect that still needs to be explored. They will go back and come up with a report and presentation that will be presented to council. The hope is to have it all done by May, which is AAPI Heritage Month. So once you get this survey to distribute to anybody, there will be like instructions. There'll be like something you can cut and paste when you send it to a friend. You don't have to think of your own language. There'll be an intro to the survey or a colleague. And yeah, so that is moving along. The other thing that is moving along is that the deadline for the HISREP applications is January 26th. And we will see how many applications we get. I know that Elena and I have been working hard on that. And I know the applicants are definitely working hard on that to get their proposals in, but they were very pleased to see a much streamlined application interface and just what they needed to turn in. So that is that. Did I forget anything, Elena, on the HISREP? So, oh, and the Emerging Needs Fund. So that is the deadline the initial deadline has passed, but we decided to give a short extension because we realized the deadline is kind of in the same time period as the HISREP time, but we did want to give opportunities to keep our commitment to those that could submit an application for the Emerging Needs Fund to have it reviewed and not skip a whole application period. So those are the some key things that I wanted to pass on.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, next thing is tentative agenda for next regular meeting, which sounds like we'll have the CDBG presentation and we'll have item 5 from this meeting, the AAPI survey. So we have 2 items already.
We have renter protections.
Yes.
We have elections, and we might be having some kind of discussion, or maybe leadership will have that about a retreat.
Oh, yeah.
So It's quite busy. February is sometimes a month where we might have 2 meetings. We might have the retreat and the regular meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All right, looks like it for tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good night.